Good evening, everyone. I want to apologize for keeping you waiting, but too many meetings crammed in a finite space of time, with traffic jams thrown in between, interspersed here and there, will result in this. So, let's begin.
Well, thank you very much. We appreciate the fact that you could make it here to the first Network 18 Power Conclave, and this is your first conclave that you're attending now as Power Minister. So thank you very much, sir. We appreciate that. We're given to understand from the Finance Minister that we are going to be seeing measures being announced by the government shortly to try and boost the economy, so to speak, to try and get growth back on the high trajectory. We're also given to understand that the power sector could play a crucial role as part of this larger stimulus package that's going to be announced. We were given to understand that the last meeting of the cabinet, there could have been another scheme related to rural electrification that was likely to be announced but finally didn't get announced. Give us a sense of what we should expect.
There will be a major announcement related to the power sector on the 25th by the Prime Minister. And I mean, we are excited about it. We are very excited about it. This is something which will be very important for the people of the country. I'll not like to sort of, go into what it will be. Let the Prime Minister announce it, and then we'll discuss it. Well, but it will be. It is a major scheme, a major project, which will be announced by the Prime Minister on the 21st.
Well, that's a big headline that you're giving us for all the reporters here in the room. The Power Minister confirming that there is going to be a big announcement related to the power sector that the Prime Minister will make on the 25th. On the 25th. Is this part of the rural electrification plan, sir, or
yes.
It is part of the...
No, it's a part of the electrification plan of the country.
Okay.
I want to limit it to a rural electrification plan.
Okay, so it takes forward the power for all...
It takes forward that, power for all, 24/7, power for all.
Okay.
Takes that forward.
And when is it likely to be operationalized? Without going into many details, sir, what are the next milestones? 25th September is the first milestone. What will be the next milestone?
Yes, after that, we'll ask the states to prepare their projects and send it to us. We'll clear those projects and we'll release the funds. And then after that, the states will start implementing it. And then they'll start implementing it. And we have timelines. We have timelines for the project. So let the Prime Minister announce it. I don't want to anticipate him. Yeah.
Okay. So we'll wait for the 25th, but you've given us a very clear heads up. There is a big announcement coming for the power sector on the 25th. Sir, I know that since you've taken over, you've obviously been reviewing the state of affairs within the sector. There is a lot to be optimistic about, a lot to feel confident about. There are also some areas of concern. Let me start by asking you about what you most feel confident about today in the context of the reforms that have already been taken and the reforms that you expect to take forward in future. What do you feel most confident about?
I want to get across 2 or 3 things. One is that the demand is growing. The demand is growing in pace with the economy. But I think it will grow faster. It will grow faster as we bring more villages, get more villages connected, as we get more households connected. As the tariffs drop, as the connectivity increases, as the systems are strengthened, which we are doing. All of this we are doing. We are strengthening the distribution systems. Our grid system, we already have an all-India grid. We are building additional capacity on that grid, even though that grid is sufficient for today's traffic. We are building additional capacity because we are bullish about the future. We are building green corridors only for green energy, dedicated to green energy. We'll be ready for the big expansion which is going to come. We are going to add 175 gigawatts of green energy. So we'll be ready for that, for connecting that to the grid. So we'll start the biddings very soon, and the biddings will be on a large scale. Some things which need correction, we are going to correct. One is about the PPAs, making sure that the PPAs are signed and the PPAs are adhered to give confidence to those who invest. We are going to change the law to provide that those PPAs are enforced. We are going to provide for PPAs to cover 100% of the annual average demand of a particular state or a DISCOM. They must tie up power. They must have long-term PPAs covering 100% of the demand for power for the area for which they have a license. That will be a requirement we'll put in. And, somehow or the other a message had gone out that the available generation capacity is sufficient. It is not sufficient. The available generation capacity today is 330 gigawatts. But a part of that is green energy, the availability of which just is, is about 20% odd. Solar energy you only have when the sun is out, wind energy you only have when the wind is there. And we have seen that the demand has grown. So, whenever there is a slack in the wind or, whenever the solar energy is interrupted, or let's say one nuclear power station goes off grid for overhaul, the demand goes up. I mean, the demand on our thermal capacity has gone up by 17% in the past few days, 17%. So we need to put in more capacity, and we are going to put in more capacity. We will put in more capacity through the NTPC, and I invite the industry also to think about putting in more capacity. There are some assets which, are in an iffy position. People had sort of started setting up plants. There were some issues. We are addressing that. For the plants which are in an advanced stage of construction, we are addressing that. And as I said, we have a long way to go. Our per capita consumption is just about 305, something like that. Mm-hmm. It should go up to about, more than, it's about 1700. What is it? So it has to go up many more times, many times. And I invite all of you to invest in this sector. Because India is a growth story. India will grow. And as it grows, the demand for power will grow exponentially. If you have any questions, doubts, I am here to answer them.
I think yes. we have many people with many questions, sir, so let me get the microphones out. But before I get to the audience, let me ask you a follow-up question. You said that legislative change will be required. You said legislative change will be required to ensure that people adhere to the PPAs. So are we likely to see you move some changes to the law in the next session of Parliament?
Yes. We plan to bring some changes in the law. We plan to, make sure that the PPAs are adhered to, and then there are some other changes which we are planning. We are planning to, have more detailed provisions for separating carriage and content. And I believe that will be another major reform. Another thing which we are planning to do is to go in for solar insofar as the individual irrigation system in agriculture is concerned. So that will take care of much of the agriculture sector, which is now, because of the subsidy, which now creates distortions. Mm-hmm. Once you have the solar pumps supplying energy for irrigation, individual irrigation systems, that will take away some of the distortion which is there currently. But we have taken away much of the distortion by insisting that wherever the states want to give subsidy, they should deposit the money up front. That provision is already there, and that is something which we are advocating to all states. Most states are now doing it. Most states are also indicating on the bill that this is your total bill as per the tariff, this is the subsidy being given by the state, and this is what you are paying. All that is written at the back of the bill. So that transparency is coming. We are also advocating DBT, direct benefit transfer. So gradually, I mean, basically the DISCOMs, the reform will be that the DISCOMs will become more and more business oriented, and as you know, insofar as subsidy is concerned, that will be compartmentalized and taken care of by these means.
So there was a gentleman here just before you came, and I'm going to request our ushers to pass on the microphone. And we were having exactly the same conversation on what happens to DISCOMs given the fact that they're saddled with so much debt, even though you've brought the Uday scheme in place.
Debt also we have taken care of.
Yes.
We have securitized the debts. Most of the states, my review says that most of the states, this securitization plan has worked. The state governments have taken over the debt and floated bonds. Some bonds still need to be subscribed. I'll be in conversation with the banks to make sure that those bonds are subscribed. Yes.
Good evening, sir. I wear two hats, but I'm representing the Wind Independent Power Producers Association. I'm the president of that association. Wind Independent Power Producers Association.
We are independent power producer.
So I'm the
thermal or green energy.
So I'm the president of that association. My name is Sunil Jain. You know, we have done great job in wind industry in last many years, and last year was probably the best ever. Unfortunately, this year would be the worst ever. People have invested money in renewable sector on the promise of 175 gigawatt, but we are seeing a lack of investment opportunities in the country as of today, as I speak.
Why?
There are no projects because the DISCOMs are not willing to buy power.
Now,
so,
if you had
how do I plan for my investments and my business as we move forward? Number two, wherever I've invested, we are not getting paid for months together. And this is known to the ministry. In fact, Honorable Minister, Mr. Piyush Goyal is well aware of it, and we thought we will apprise you also. But the fact is that power is a concurrent subject. It is not always that what center proposes, the state disposes. So is there any plan for the government to align center and state in terms of policy, practices, and growth of the business altogether?
Now, you raised three issues. One issue was that the states do not pay. I will review that situation, and I'll try and ensure that the states are prompt with their payments. We do raise questions with the state governments whenever the payments are pending and the matter is brought to our notice. But as of now, I don't think that many states are in that situation. One minister for energy of one state had called on me yesterday. And, you know, his DISCOM had some outstandings, payments pending to others. So we raised it with him. We do that. You please let us have data about what is pending with you, and we will raise it with the states. Gradually, our effort is to get the DISCOMs into situation where this is no longer, I mean, it is given that they'll buy power and they'll pay you within 30 days or maximum, the maximum is 60 days. They have to pay you within 60 days. And insofar as opportunities for investment are concerned in the green energy sector, let me tell you that up to December, I have asked my ministry to bid out 20,000 megawatts of solar and 20,000 megawatts of wind.
By
that
December.
is the target, yes. That is the target which I have given my ministry. So you are welcome to participate. I am quite sure that there will be many participants, and there are many people wanting to invest because the tariff is coming down. The bids have brought the tariff down. It had gone down to 2.44. The last bid was 2.50 or something like that. And so there is a future. There is a huge future. And my concern is that, you know, at the same time will need fossil fuel energy, that is either gas or thermal and hydel. I will need that to balance solar and wind. And I'll need to be able to ensure that even when the tariff for green energy goes down to 2 rupees 50 paisa, those, you know, sectors also remain commercially viable.
Yeah.
Because if they shut off, then we'll have a problem. So I'll have to balance that as well. But that is something which is there in our mind. And therefore we'll be adding on, you know, fossil fuel capacity as well. As I said, the availability from green power is about what, 20%, 21%. Storage has not come in as yet. Storage is still not viable. I mean, but if I look ahead to next 7-10 years, I think storage will become viable. Then probably the availability will go up. But I invite you to bid. You know, that's the target which I have set for my ministry.
So
yes.
That's the other headline that's come in, 20,000 megawatts of solar and 20,000 megawatts of wind will be bid out by December. Yes, Arunabha, go ahead with your question. So I'll just come to you in just 1 second, sir.
Good evening, Minister. I'm Arunabha Ghosh. I run the Council on Energy, Environment and Water. We've been working very closely with the Power Ministry. A very simple question to you, especially with regards to the declining tariffs for solar and wind. How do we convince the state utilities to sign the PPAs, let alone pay for them?
If you would have heard what I said, when I said that every DISCOM, I mean, we want to change the laws to make sure that the regulations provide that every DISCOM will get into long-term PPAs for 100% of its average annual demand. This is a step to make sure that the DISCOMs sign PPAs. And we are also going to make sure that the provisions in law and the regulations are stringent so that the PPAs which are signed are honored. I mean, that is something which is there in our mind. And the reason behind that is this. Now, somebody will say that I am not giving any, leaving any flexibility to the DISCOMs. That's not true. Because they'll still have a flexibility to buy peaking power. They'll still need peaking power. If you take 100% of average annual demand, that will not cater to the peak requirements. So the peak requirement energy, they'll still be able to buy on the open market, in the grid, in the open market. But apart from that, the average annual demand, they should have sources of supply tied up. That I think is something which the consumers require.
Okay. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Good evening, sir. I am B.D. Prasad from Mitra Energy, MWTRA. Sir, I have one question regarding this. When we are talking about
Keep your mic separate, yes.
When we are talking about 100 gigawatt solar plant, either it is rooftop or land mounting, it needs per megawatt 5 acres of land average. So land requirement is huge. And when we have some technology where land requirement is less, like bifacial panel. Bifacial. Both side panels are cells are there.
Yes.
Right? It can be mounted vertically. And so usable space is not required.
Okay.
I have a proposal with DMRC and MNRE also as a pilot project which can be mounted on DMRC viaduct. All along the railway line, both sides handrails are there, that can be replaced with this bifacial solar plant. But since this is a new project, new technology, cost is higher. So whether I request ministry, whether viable gap can be compensated so that new pilot project can be added. Once it is through, it can be mounted on all the metro line and all the flyovers without using usable space.
Thank you very much, sir.
You are asking for a subsidy. You are asking for a subsidy. We are in the process, yes, sit down. We are in the process of phasing out subsidies. Now the tariff has become so competitive that we don't need to give subsidy. Therefore, I don't see any logic as to why we should give subsidy. Without subsidy, the tariff is coming to 250, rupees 60 paisa. Therefore, why should the government give subsidy? Why should the people give subsidy? And if you say that you have this panel which is more efficient, then actually you should not need subsidy. So you'll have to think about that. Come in with products which don't, which are competitive, because only such products will survive. And now, solar is competitive, wind is competitive. Wind is also becoming competitive. We are also thinking of, offshore wind farms. So we will set up a the offshore. We plan to set up an offshore farm in the public sector just to demonstrate that it is possible and that it is viable. I will invite you people also to think on those lines. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
I am Bala, Indo-Wind Energy Chairman. So we have set up about 100 megawatt of wind and solar projects. Now the main problem we have been facing in the last 4 years is grid backup, because they want to run coal plants or they want to run hydro plants, but what PPA signed, what projects already been set up, we are not running them full capacity. The government, the state is not, the utilities are not allowing us to run. One. Two, as many friends mentioned, they are delaying the payment. Maybe they will make the payment, but they are not paying interest for the delayed payments. While we take loan from a bank, same bank calls us as a defaulter or so many things. There are strict norms by RBI. So what are we planning for that? When we add a new capacities, first of all, existing capacities, how do we make them efficient? Okay. How do you make these utilities to take the power, don't do the load shedding or a backup?
Now again, as I told you, number one, how do you make the utilities buy power and not do load shedding? As I said, the regulation will prescribe, the regulation which I have in mind will prescribe that they must have tied up sources of supply for 100% of the power required for the area which they are licensed to serve or for which they want a license. That is only fair. So they will have to do that. And as the demand will grow up, as the demand will grow, I see the demand growing because we are going in for universal coverage. We will connect every village. We were given a list of 18,450 odd villages which were not electrified. We've covered about 15,400 odd. Only 3,000 villages are left, which we will cover by December. And then I am going to ask all state governments that please check up. If any habitation is left out, let us know. We'll give you the money for connecting that also. So there is going to be universal coverage. So the demand will go up as the tariffs become more, affordable, or as the tariffs go down. And now, as so far as this is concerned, payments. As I said, we take up with the states whenever there is any payment pending. You please do let us know if the payment is pending. And I think we should also provide in the regulations, I will consider that. We should also provide in the regulations for payment with interest in case of delayed payments. And how payments can be enforced, that is also something, beyond 60 days, if some discount delays beyond 60 days, how it can be enforced, that is also something then we'll think about. Noted? Yes?
Yes, sir, go ahead.
Sir, myself, Shweta.
Just 1 second, ma'am. Yes, go ahead.
Sir, my name is Karni Singh. We just want to know, you're also holding the additional portfolio of Ministry of Mines. And there
Ministry
is
of, no, I'm not. I'm only looking at power and
renewable energy.
MNRE.
Okay, so in that case, there is a Supreme Court judgment which has a fallout on coal, where Mahanadi coal fields, etc., have, violated in some manner, and they have mined excess coal, which results in a 22,000 crore fine on them. Likelihood. Does that make you lose sleep? Because if you bankrupt one of them, then probably you'll have problems on coal supplies. So is change of law or relooking or asking Supreme Court to relook at that ruling, is that also on your plate at this point in time?
I'm sure the Ministry of Coal will be looking at it. because this is something which the Ministry of Coal will look at. The Ministry of Coal is confident that they will be able to meet our requirements, even our proposed expansion requirements. I believe them. Yes.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. Mr. Parekh, I'll get the microphone across to you, sir. If we can till the yes, ma'am. Go ahead till I get the microphone across to Mr. Parekh. Can you raise the microphone, please?
Myself, Shweta Verma, and I am asking one question to you regarding 175 gigawatt of power. So we are going to produce 175 gigawatt of power in 2030.
From green energy.
Yeah, from green energy. But where we are having the power managers to manage all these things? The courses which are running in the institute are getting shut it down now.
I couldn't get you, please.
Where will you get the trained manpower to be able to look
Especially
after?
Power managers,
yeah,
sir.
power managers.
Like NPTI, they are having power managers. UPS, they are having power managers. But the courses are now being shut it down. Closures are there.
The courses are being shut down, so where do you actually get
The courses are being shut down.
Yeah.
Yes.
So from where we get the power managers for the future?
Now, are we talking about courses in graduate
renewable.
engineering courses? Or
No,
are
sir.
you talking about
MBA
diploma
power. MBA power.
MBA power.
You talk about management courses?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Noted. I'll get into this.
Okay,
I'll find out the data, what it is,
Okay,
and then
sir.
we'll take it up.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
But
you,
there's
sir.
one thing which I have discussed
Yeah.
already, which we have discussed already. We have a new minister for skill development, Mr. Dharmendra Pradhan. So we've already had a discussion about skill development in the field of grid maintenance and distribution. So the generation, people tell me that by and large the skill development capacity is sufficient. But if it is not sufficient, if we'll need more trained manpower at the floor level, I'll get into another conversation with Mr. Pradhan to make sure that that happens. Insofar as graduate engineers are concerned, I believe the country is producing enough graduate engineers, so we don't have a problem. Insofar as diploma engineers are concerned, the country has added a large number of ITIs for diploma. So diploma engineers should also not be a problem. In the coming couple of years from now on, there should be sufficient diploma engineers. As far as workmen are concerned, I have already told you, I have had a word with, we have had a discussion with me and the Minister for Skill Development, but that management was off my radar. I'll have a look at it.
Well, thank you very much for taking that into
I didn't
consideration.
know that there was a specialized management course on power. I didn't
Well,
know. Yes.
Yes, sir. Mr.
But
Parekh.
we'll look into it.
I'm Kirit Parekh. I am chairman of a...
I know you. Yes.
Okay. Well, I think the question, your idea that make everyone sign a PPA is a good idea in some sense. It will really make all consumers get their electricity.
Yes.
And it would also provide incentive for new power plants to come
Exactly.
in. Problem, however, I see is the following, that if the DISCOMs are going to do all these things, and they are not able to cut down the AT&C losses, and they are not able to make efficiency of grains in this, then their losses would keep on mounting.
I'll answer that.
And what we find is that in AT&C losses, often many state employees of the DISCOMs are not willing to make the changes that is required.
Right.
And unless there is a will on the state government's part to enforce
I'll tell you what
this
we are doing. We are conscious about it. In fact, we have been telling the states that this business cannot work until you are able to collect the cost or the price of the power which you distribute. If you are not able to recover the value of the goods which you are selling, then no business can survive. And we have been reiterating this to the states. Now there are two or three aspects which we are looking at to address. One, of course, we have a specific program to address this. It's called Uday. There we are looking at bringing down the losses, and the losses have started coming down. Number one, we are reducing the debt burden. Number two, we are giving money to meter all the feeders and transformers apart from consumers. So we are giving money for feeder separation, separate feeders for agriculture, which will also be metered. We are giving money for feeder metering, we are giving money for transformer metering, and we are giving money for consumer metering. Now, another recommendation which we are making to the states is that you go in for smart meters or prepaid meters. Now, most of our population can be covered by prepaid meters. Now, that is a technology which has, which will do away with meter readers. It will do away with the problem of billing. You don't have to print out bills and you don't have to serve bills. It will do away with the problem of collection because they are prepaid. So, and of course, they'll be tamper-proof because anybody tries to tamper with them, they'll give an alarm and they'll shut off. So, that is what we have told the states to go in for. And wherever that is not possible, wherever there's a constraint for smart meter manufacturing. So, I am thinking of calling all the meter manufacturers and telling them that, look, my requirement is going to be, so many crore meters, you get into it. Let more people start manufacturing, and I am going to provide the money to change the meter so that we have smart meters. So that is one aspect. You have a smart meter, nobody thinks twice about collection issues in the television business. Why? Because if you don't pay, it will shut off. Or in the mobile business. I mean, it's prepaid, you either make the payment in advance, or even if it is postpaid, if you don't pay on time, it will shut off. That's exactly where we are going to take the energy business. That is where we are going to take it. That you don't pay, it will shut off. Even if it is postpaid, or we will start with prepaid. Prepaid, naturally, you have to, deposit some money in advance. You can do that through your mobile, Paytm or Bheem app or whatever. And anybody can do it. And then consumers who prove themselves over a period of 1 year, they can shift to postpaid. But postpaid also, if you haven't paid at the end of on the 30th day or 31st day, it will switch off. So that will take care of most of my consumers. Now that leaves the agriculture segment, which is the political segment. Now most state governments give either free electricity for agriculture or heavily subsidized electricity. Now that is what skews the market. The most of the losses and theft are, blamed on agriculture. If the DISCOM has 40% loss, it says that's because of agriculture. Whereas, I don't think that more than 20% will be on account of agriculture, 20% will be, and out of 20%, 5-6% will be technical losses, or maybe 7%, and the rest will be theft. Now, that theft can be taken care of by feeder metering and transformer metering. And where you don't put prepaid meters or where you don't put smart meters, I am recommending that you go in for the franchisee system. You get the private sector in at the distribution end, separating carriage and content. The carriage will still be maintained by the DISCOM, because it's only the DISCOM which has a long-term interest in preserving that distribution system. If I give that also to the private distribution company, there is a danger that they may not invest money in keeping it ship-shape. They'll try to sort of economize on maintenance. So the carriage will remain with the DISCOM. The content will be transferred to the franchisee or to the retail licensee, and that retail licensee will buy power in bulk from the DISCOM and distribute it amongst whosoever, 100 customers, 1,000 consumers, whatever may be the size which may be decided. So that is where we are going. You do that, and people will pay. Insofar as the agriculture segment is concerned, going for solar pumps, which is what I have in mind. So we are going to the again I have given an impossible target for MNRE, which is 2.5 lakh solar pumps by the end of the financial year.
2.5 lakh by the end of the financial year. Okay.
So I've given an impossible target, but I'll try and make sure that they achieve it. And that is, so every farmer will have a solar pump. And in fact, he'll be generating more energy than he requires, because the panel will be bigger. And so he'll feed that extra energy back into the grid and make an income. So that will take away that, the subsidized segment. Where that has still not happened, we have been telling the states that you deposit the money upfront. For the subsidy you want to give to the farmer, you deposit the money upfront. Now most states are now doing it. And whichever state will not do it, will build in incentives and disincentives to make sure that they do it. If you take away the subsidized segment, then you don't have a problem. And there's another thing which we have been sort of pushing, which I have been pushing. You see the differential, there are different slabs of tariff. In some states had as many as 17 slabs. I mean, that's nonsense. So the law provides that the different slabs, will not vary from each other by more than 20%. Will not, that band will not be more than 20%. So that one segment is not heavily taxed to subsidize the other segment. Now that is another thing which we will try and insist on. So that the cost of power for industry is not exorbitant. And then, industrialization will also happen. That is necessary also for Make in India. You won't have Make in India until less power is affordable.
Yes.
Right? So that is again something which is our focus.
Okay, we've got lots of hands here.
And yes.
Let me know how much time you have, sir. So I will.
5 minutes?
Okay, 5 minutes. So we'll take 2 questions. Yes, go ahead.
Good evening, sir.
If you give me a glass of water, 10 minutes.
Okay, great. Please.
I'm coming straight. I'm coming straight from another meeting.
We'll get you 2 glasses of water, so then you can give us 20
minutes.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Rahul Tongya. I am a scholar at Brookings India, not-for-profit think tank. Brookings India, not-for-profit think tank. Have been an advisor to the ministry, including for smart grids. The Smart Grid Task Force, Smart Grid Forum bodies I had set up in the smart grid space. So question on interest rates. DISCOMs spend 80% of their cost on procuring power. It's their biggest cost. And one thing that's underappreciated when we compare with other countries, our interest rates are one of the big reasons why the cost of power is so high. It's not because of inefficiency. So in the RE world, there's a lot of talk of getting global capital and cheaper interest rates. But can the same thing also be thought of outside the renewable energy space? Because cheaper interest rates will help efficiency, it will help clean coal technologies. There's so much more that needs to be done to get the cost of power down.
Let me tell you one thing upfront. I am not in favor of subsidies. So I am not looking at interest subvention. But what I am looking forward to is the interest rates going down. Because the inflation has been by and large under control. And as we go forward, I think the inflation rates will come down and the interest rates will also come down. That is something which has been the focus of the government and the Ministry of Finance for some time. That is what the Ministry of Finance has been insisting upon, that the interest rates must go down south. And that is what we are looking forward to. But you are right. I mean, interest rates need to be affordable. How can you compete in manufacturing with a country where you get money at, let's say, 3% or 4%. I mean, you can't compete if your cost of funds is 10%. So that is something which the government of India knows. And
so has the government of India been able to convince the RBI as well, sir? Is this also likely to be an announcement that we will see shortly?
Yes, Ministry of Finance and RBI have been having this discussion for some time now. Yes. But the government of India is clear in its mind.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Go ahead.
Sir, this is Manoj Tiwari. You talked about smart meters. You talked about prepaid meters for domestic consumers and maybe for agriculture. What about industries installing bi-directional meter for net metering purpose from the very beginning itself? Because we are facing that of challenges.
We'll be metering every feeder and every transformer. So we'll know exactly how much energy is going where. And we also will be metering the industry. And thanks, Rafa. Now, by and large, all our major consumers are metered. And all our major consumers will get smart metered also. That is also something which will happen. Just as we change over for consumer metering, we'll be changing over for our bulk consumers very quickly, because it's very important. And they'll also be tamper-proof. And once you have that, I think we'll be able to do the sums very quickly. So we'll know whether somebody is cheating or not.
Okay, let me get...
time frame.
It's
important.
Too many hands. He already said he has only about 5 minutes. So let me give the lady here an opportunity to ask the last question. Yes, go ahead.
Kanika Chawla from the Council on Energy, Environment and Water. You mentioned Make in India earlier today, but given the current Make in India, but given the current competitiveness of solar manufacturing in India, there is a trade-off between making solar in India and making cheap power to make everything else in India. So from a governmental point of view, at an economy level, which is...
I'll tell you. This has been a concern with us for some time. And it's a major concern. It's not nice to say this, but I have been getting reports ever since I joined about dumping by certain countries. And dumping on a large scale, dumping at rates which do not even meet the manufacturing cost, which is holding back our indigenous industry. Now, so I asked my officers to verify this. And let me have the figures as to how they say that the rates at which the modules are being dumped from particular countries are less than the, any commonsensical calculation about manufacturing costs. They will give me the papers. If they do that, and then I will move for anti-dumping duties.
So has the investigation already begun, sir? Is the DG Safeguards looking into this issue?
My officers have already told me this.
Okay.
I have asked them to give me the calculations and give me whatever evidence they have. And once we are convinced, the ministry will write to the concerned ministry that we should levy anti-dumping duties.
Let me quickly ask you two quick questions, sir, before we let you go. Your colleague, Mr. Gadkari, said that in the next 3 to 4 weeks, the electric vehicle policy will be taken to cabinet, sir. Are you ready? Is the Power Ministry ready with the proposal for electric vehicles in consultation with Mr. Gadkari?
We have had a discussion. In fact, today also that we had a presentation on this, on the various types of electric vehicles which are feasible, which are possible, which are likely to come. And we will be ready, let me tell you this. In fact, we've already decided that we'll get about 1,000 electric cars which will be used by our ministries, etc. And we will build up an ecosystem where electric vehicles will start functioning. The price of lithium-ion batteries has gone down. We expect it to go down further. Per kilowatt hour, the prices have come down rapidly. And as the demand increases, we expect it to go down further. We are also, currently it's only manufacturers abroad. Some manufacturers here have started. I have told my officers to call all the major manufacturers in the world, and then I'll be addressing them. I'll ask them to set up manufacturing facilities in India, because we will be.
This is battery or OEMs as well for.
OEMs is not an issue. Our car manufacturers are already into it. They've already been building models. Some of the models are very, ready to roll out and things like that. So the OEMs are there, and OEMs are already into it. The battery manufacturing is something which we want to establish here in the country, but that is going to happen.
Okay.
That is going to happen. And
so the next 3 to 4 weeks, the cabinet will sign off on this policy.
Insofar as the 1,000 cars are concerned, I believe that the process is already on, the bids have already been called. Insofar as solar-powered autos and buses are concerned, we have some designs which are almost final. We have some modalities. We will be setting up some SPV to sort of organize the re-energizing or charging or whatever you call it. So we are into it.
Okay. Let me very quickly then ask you, sir, about the state of the stressed assets. Mundra, for instance, you know, your predecessor was in touch
Now, let's
with...
not talk about individual,
Sure.
but you know, we have about 40,000 megawatts of stressed assets. Now, 2 have been resolved, and not 2 were dissolved because you know they were stressed for some reasons. 7 did not have coal linkage or coal blocks, so they have been resolved under the scheme, you know, the Shakti scheme of the Ministry of Coal. Those who had linkage earlier or those who had blocks earlier which were cancelled because of the Supreme Court orders. Now then we had a specific scheme to address that, Shakti scheme. So that has taken care of 7 of them. There are others which have issues pertaining to finances. And some have issues pertaining to PPAs which are subordinate. The PPAs issues will get resolved. As I said, you know, the PPAs issues will get resolved across the board once we have this obligation. But the finance issues are what I saw, that many of these had not even brought in their share of equity. I mean, the equity should be at least 30%. But I mean, many of the units I saw that they were far below that. So the investors need to be more upfront. You know, they can't just have taken loan and refuse to put in equity and then after that sort of put their hands up. It's not going to happen. So we have to look at how do we sort of get a management change, how do we get somebody else to put in the equity. It's not a one-sided story. It's not a one. We have a committee which is going into this every fortnight, every 10 days. So they sit and they along with the bankers and they try to work it out. We'll try and salvage as much as possible, but unless and until the promoters cooperate, then we'll have to replace the promoters. Where the project has not started, there we'll just sort of drop it. Where the project has started and you know it has crossed that some milestones where it is more than 50% constructed, we'll try and salvage it. Yeah.
So let me end then, sir, by asking you, by the end of this calendar year, what is the impossible target that you've set for yourself?
I told you.
That was the next financial year. I'm asking you for this calendar year.
I told you, these targets are for this calendar, this financial year.
Yeah, so now I'm asking you for this calendar year. By December.
Okay, by December, I would have energized every unenergized village for which I have a list by December 17th. Then I will throw out a challenge to all the states that look, I have connected every village of which you gave me the list. Now tell me if any village is left, please let me know. We'll do that. That is something which you know we'll do in December. And then another impossible challenge is coming up. Just wait for the 25th.
Okay, we'll wait for the 25th. And you promised to give us the first interview on the 25th.
Absolutely.
All right.
After the Prime Minister makes the announcement.
After the Prime Minister makes the announcement. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate you joining us here. And thank you very much for your questions.
Thank you.